Check. Check. 1, 2, 3. Check, check, check. Check, check, check. Check, 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 check. Check, check, check. 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 Check, check. Okay, now it's working. That's working. Let's go upstairs and see if that's the other one's working.
What this thing doing? So this is for inputs, right? Mixing all inputs.
Two outputs. Two outputs going to here. This is a processor. This splits into 6 outputs.
For speakers.
It's 6 outputs.
For this. And I would also say that
and it's right now it's just doing some filtering.
Also, there's outer speakers. I would say to do methods. I can switch. Because you see.
Use this microphone. See what
Translator headphones like Q&A.
No, the translator headphones up there is the problem.
Okay.
You can do the translator headphones.
One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. 1. 1.
dani chapsu chi dagi jinzo jipe sonam ji rula pinchi sanje rupa sho sanje chedan soichi chonam la chancho bado dani chapsu chi dagi jinzo jipe sonam Rula Pinchi Sanje Drupai Ju Sanje Chedan Sochi Chonam La Janjo Bado Dani Chasu Chi Dagi Jinzo Jipe Sonam Ji Rula Pinchi Sanje Drupai Ju Padin Sawe Lama Rinpoche Dagi Chiwo Peme Denshula Kadin Chimbo Gone Jezunde Kusun Tuche Nudra Saudu So. So we're resuming from where we paused yesterday. We have studying the section on the mantra, how the Shentong view is to be approached through mantra yana or Vajrayana. And as with the preceding much longer section on approaching the Shentong view through the Sutra tradition, it's divided into two parts also. Yesterday we did the section how to understand, in other words, the kind of theoretical basis, and now a short explanation of the actual practice. But as I did mention yesterday, in fact it's not a really full account of the practice, because for that to be given, you would have to have received the appropriate initiation. That would be, in this case, a major initiation in the Kala Chakra, according to the Dolpopa lineage, and you would have to maintain the vows and pledges and so on, and also have accomplished the development stage, as you'll see. So it's like enough to give you an approximate idea of how the Vajrayana practice can bring you to realize Shentong view, with the intention of inspiring people to go ahead and enter into this way if they so wish in the future. So Controleur Thaye says, practice the main part as follows, and then he gives a citation from the so-called Great Commentary. The Great Commentary means the commentary on Kala Chakra itself, composed by the Rigdin king, the great holder of the Kala Chakra, known as Pemakapo, or in Sanskrit, Pundarika. So he's the author of the main commentary on Kala Chakra. And here he explains the method of the completion stage in Kala Chakra, how it works. So what he says is this: the fire that always abides in wood or dwells in wood is not, you cannot see it by means of cutting and separating the wood. However, by rubbing one kindling stick, one piece of wood, together with another, it will be seen. It will be seen. So that's the analogy. You can't see the fire, so to speak, that's potentially there, unless you rub two sticks together, and then the fire appears. Similarly, the luminosity of mind, the natural purity of mind, will not be seen by means of conceptual meditation, because the more you practice conceptual meditation, the danger is the more you become caught up in concepts, of course. So it says it will not be seen by means of conceptual meditation. However, when the lalana rasana, Lalana is a Sanskrit name for the left channel in the subtle body, the main left channel, the subject channel, and the Rasana, the right channel, the object, the channel of object, if you like. When the Lalana and Rasana are joined, then it will be seen. So that's the analogy. The analogy is the two sticks rubbing together and producing fire, to signify how through bringing the winds and drops that now in us, in our dualistic, ignorant phase, are simply, as it were, moving or trapped in the right and left channels, the dualistic channels. If we can bring them together in the central channel, then we will see the luminosity of mind, the Buddha nature itself. And so that in a very brief and poetic way describes the method, the intention of practicing the completion stage. So Control Rinpoche will say, Control Lodro Thai will say a little bit more, so we're just clear about how it might work. He says, so remember, this is all with regard to the completion stage, the Zorim. The understanding is that you've mastered the development stage, so your impure vision of your body and your speech as gross objects has been transformed. You have that pure vision of yourself and others as deities. That is the objective of the development stage, the creation stage. So now, having accomplished transformation up to that point, you can enter into the Zorim, the completion stage. So, Control Lodro Thai says, going back to the passage from the great commentary that we've just read, thus the natural luminosity is the reality of the supreme unchanging primordial wisdom. And therefore, of course, they're both, the natural luminosity and the supreme unchanging primordial wisdom are what has been described as Buddha nature already. Its essence, so like everyone says, what is the substance of this? Its essence is emptiness endowed with all supreme characteristics. In other words, it's not a thing that you can grasp. It doesn't have any of the characteristics of a thing, of a truly existent thing, of a truly existent substance. It's actually empty of all those attributes of substantiality, or else it would be simply a conditioned phenomenon. It would not be pure. So it's empty, but not empty in a simply negative way, but the emptiness beyond all extremes, beyond all characteristics, beyond all elaborations. Its essence is emptiness, and its nature, the nature of this primordial wisdom, this luminosity, is present as the supreme unchanging great bliss. So if its essence is unfindable, it doesn't originate in any time, it doesn't exist as a thing now, and it will not cease. Nevertheless, it's that emptiness doesn't signify a blankness or non-existence, because it's simultaneously the great bliss itself. And this is, of course, this emphasis on great bliss is characteristic of the completion stage of Vajrayana. It is, if you like, the way we approach the true nature is through the experience of bliss. As he says, as Control continues, this primordial wisdom, this emptiness endowed with all characteristics, this great bliss, these will not be seen by the variety of conceptual meditations. Because as I mentioned, conceptual meditation, even conceptually meditating through analysis on emptiness, doesn't lead you to emptiness, because emptiness is beyond all concept, beyond all language. You can refine your language, you can get better and better at using language, and better at using concepts, but even the concept of emptiness will finally be an obstruction to experiencing emptiness, because it's another position that you're affirming and clinging to. So, conceptual meditation is simply inadequate to the job of experiencing the primordial nature, the real essence of the Shentong teaching. But, he says, but by the extraordinary means of non-discriminating concentration, that's here signifying the type of practice you're going to do if you practice the completion stage, they, Buddha nature, luminosity, primordial wisdom, etc., they will be seen like a reflection in a mirror. So the generation of bliss that comes about through bringing together the winds and drops into the central channel produces an experience of great bliss. And that great bliss is like a reflection of the true nature itself. The true nature, of course, cannot be grasped through language, as we've just said. It cannot be grasped through concept. But just as you can, as it were, get an idea of your face, which you cannot behold directly, but you can get a glimpse of what it is through looking at its reflection in a mirror, so the ultimate true nature can be seen through the great bliss. We call this, generally in Vajrayana, the Pe Yeshi, the example wisdom. The wisdom that is like not the definitive wisdom of ultimate reality, but by experiencing this you can clear away all your ignorance about it, all your errors about it, making it much easier to realize the final, the definitive wisdom. So that is why we practice the Vajrayana methods in this case. So Jamgon Kongtrul is going to get a little more specific in terms of the stages of the practice of the Zorim according to the Kalachakra tradition. And there the Zorim, as we mentioned yesterday, is called the Vajra Yoga, or the six-limbed Vajra Yoga. Not to be confused with the 6 Dhammas of Naropa, so famous in our Kajju tradition, but to a certain extent similar, but not identical. So he will talk us through them, but essentially we're just going to hear the names, because to go into more detail is not possible, as I mentioned earlier. So he says, Kongtrul Lodra Thai says, first, this is the 6-limbed yoga. First, one relies upon the first 2 limbs, which are called withdrawal and meditative absorption. Meditative absorption is in Tibetan samten, in Sanskrit dhyana. It's, of course, also the title of the 8th chapter of the Perfection of Wisdom. So it's referring to a certain type of meditative stability. So the first limbs, the first 2 sets of practices are called this. So the first one, withdrawal, means essentially withdrawing the senses from the engagement with external objects, because it's through that grasping at external objects that one remains trapped in dualistic perception. So one has to withdraw the senses. And that's accomplished, as he says, by 2 different types of yoga, one called the darkness yoga and one called daylight yoga. The darkness yoga is exactly that, is to meditate in an environment from which as much light as possible has been excluded, which obviously will help the process of withdrawing from sense objects. At this time, through the darkness yoga, 4 particular signs will be seen. And these signs are the beginnings of the movement of the winds towards the central channel. They're not there, but they're moving. At this time, the 4 signs that will be seen in the darkness yoga will be smoke, mirages, a bright sky, and lights. Then, by the daytime yoga, the 6 signs seen when you do the practice of withdrawal by looking at the sky. Daytime yoga means essentially gazing into the sky. Then by the daytime yoga of a cloudless sky, that's obviously the necessity, so quite difficult for English people to practice this frequently. But You have to check the weather forecast. Then by the daytime yoga of a cloudless sky, one will see flames. These are the six signs now. Flames, moon, sun, crossed vajras, lightning flashes, and drops. Drops are the bindu, the tigle in Tibetan. The last of them is the most important, the drop, because finally the drop appears at the forehead. These are not visualizations, these are actually, so to speak, visual appearances that arise during the course of the withdrawing. When these 10 signs are perfected, they comprise what are known as the empty forms, the tongzuk in Tibetan. It means, in a way, they're just manifestations of emptiness. It's like emptiness manifesting a form. By resting, and then the second yoga, by resting in this meditation, in the daytime and in the nighttime, one experiences everything arising, the entirety of the three realms, desire realm, formless realms, one experiences them arising as just emptiness, and therefore one stabilizes that experience. So that is the first two yogas. And then the third and fourth yogas, or limbs I should say, but better limbs, are called the pranayama, breath control, and retention. So subsequently, by relying upon the limbs of breath control and retention, one draws in the melting bliss. So pranayama, of course, is the deliberate control of the flow of winds, because, as is said in the Tantras, just as a rider is carried on a horse, so the movement of mind, thoughts, is carried on the wind. So if you want to stop a rider moving, you stop his or her horse. Similarly, in order to bring dualistic thought to an end, you use the aid of the breath, but through meditations like the vase breathing, which some of you have probably been introduced to, or the Vajra recitation, another form of pranayama. And with this, the winds gather within, they stop flowing out and gather within, and as they do that, this heat is generated. And with the heat generated by the gathering of the breath, the elements, the impure elements, which are like the karmic kind of contaminated elements within you, they start to melt, and bliss is produced. Just as in the springtime, when there's an increase of heat, there's an increase, therefore, of the red element, and that produces the melting of the white element, which is why animals tend to make love a lot in the spring. Humans maybe more frequently or less frequently, and why everybody feels blissful in the spring. So the bliss starts to melt, and by the continued practice of the pranayama, you retain it. It does not move out. It's not wasted. And so the process of dissolving duality continues. And then the fifth and sixth limb are called subsequent mindfulness, and sixth limb is called samadhi, meditative concentration. So after the generation of the bliss and the retention of the bliss, then to further refine that experience of bliss and continue the process of melting the elements, the karmically contaminated elements, you practice this fifth limb, which will involve the partner. Now, in the Kalatraka, that partner could be, actually, if you are a suitable practitioner, lay practitioner, you maintained your vows and pledges, and you mastered the practice so far. This could be actually a physical consort who again would have to have the same qualifications as you, but also it can be a yeshi consort, a wisdom consort, a visualized consort, which is obviously the way that those who maintain their monastic vows would have to practice it, and others too, if they so wished, if it was more suitable. So by subsequent mindfulness, the yoga of subsequent mindfulness, and then the sixth yoga, meditative concentration, Contra says, one accomplishes the supreme, unchanging, ultimate bliss. So in other words, the bliss that has been arising now is utterly perfected. And it said in the teachings that at this time, as all the elements, the impure elements have been melted, your body is transformed into a body, a rainbow body, a jalu, made just of lights. So, Contra continues, by stopping the breath of the transferred imprints, conventional deluded appearances suddenly cease and stable pure vision sweeps out without center or edge. What this signifies is, you see, we alluded to it yesterday a little bit in the teaching on theoretical section. As I tried to explain a little bit yesterday, without giving away any of the family secrets, so to speak, the way we experience the world now, yes, it's arising from our karmic imprints carried in the Alaya Vijnana, the base consciousness, but actually those karmic imprints, in a way, are stored in different parts of the subtle body, in the channels, and particularly in the subtle form of the channels called the syllables, the letters. So that what we experience as an external world, how we experience that realm in which we dwell, is really projection from the syllables, where the winds that represent the energy of the mind tend to gather due to karma. So right now, it's like the experience of the external world is the experience of, as he calls them, our transferred imprints. Imprints transferred because they dwell through habituation at different parts of the subtle body and then project the world. This is how, for instance, the great yogins like Jesse Milarepa could dissolve the experience of the elements. What seemed to be a rock to others, it was not a rock to him, because he could change the flow of the winds in the subtle body, and therefore the projection of solidity would dissolve for him. So by this practice of the 6 limbs, one actually is able to take control of this process, and by channeling all the winds and the drops into the central channel, there's nothing there to project outwards as deluded conventional appearances. It's like the totality of the 6 realms and your belief in them and your rebirth in them stops through this process. So impure vision has completely come to an end. The mechanisms that keep impure vision going have finished. And as his Jampa says, stable pure vision sweeps out without center or edge. Because the whole of what you imagined as the universe, or the totality of this human realm, or if you're a god, the God's realm, is finished. So it's just now pure vision. With the perfections of purity, the parameters, remember this, we talked about it in the sutra section, with the parameters or perfections of purity, self, bliss and permanence, free from impurities, one actually becomes, because that's what one is, the state one is now realized, the true self, the true purity, etc., one actually becomes the all-pervasive Dharmakaya, the primordial Buddha, as in Sanskrit it's called, Adi Buddha, in Tibetan Sanji Dampo. This doesn't mean like a Buddha before all Buddhas, it means the fundamental primordial nature of all Buddhas, often like signified in the Tantras as Vajradhara, or in the ancient Tantras, the Nyingma Tantras as Samantabhadra. That is it. One becomes the primordial Buddha. It's a phrase very much used in the Kalachakra, in fact, Adi Buddha, primordially present in oneself. Now in Sutra language, we simply say one has fully realized the Buddha nature. But in Vajrayana language, we say one is now realized, one has become the Adi Buddha. I mean, one was always the Adi Buddha, but one did not realize it. So that's really, really, really in a totally sketchy and hopefully non-disclosing way, the way the Vajra Yoga, the completion stage, will work. So Control just adds to that, Jampa Control adds that, for this mode of practice, meaning the completion stage practice, it is necessary to maintain completely pure pledges and conduct. Pure pledges, pure samaya. In every Vajrayana initiation, you make certain pledges, at the very minimum, refuge and bodhicitta, to ensure that you with the phenomenon abide within Dharma and abide within Mahayana. If it's a major initiation in the two highest sets of tantras, Yoga and Anuttara, you in addition take the specific Vajrayana vow known as the commitment to avoid the 14 root downfalls. Because if you commit one of these 14 root downfalls, the possibility of gaining accomplishment through the practice is utterly destroyed. So it's very vital to keep those, which means, of course, you need to learn what they are. So that is, if anybody's interested in Vajrayana, that's a very necessary project for you to do that. Because if you do not know, then if you do not know what the vows and pledges are, it's possible that due to Chinese whispers, as we could call them, you believe untruths, you think that things that aren't pledges, and pledges you don't have, you do have, but other pledges that you do really have through entering properly into initiations with fully qualified masters, you'll not imagine you do have, and that you should keep. So that's really important, just by the way. So that is kind of Dhamma Controls like a small print warning, but we should say for us it should be very big print. In order to do so, in order to do this mode of practice, one should understand the teachings of the Lords of Dharma, the fathers and sons, so the way the teaching has been transmitted through the lineage, and the instructions of one's own lamas, and then one should meditate one-pointedly accordingly. So that concludes the teachings on the actual practice, and with that, everything on the Shentong from the Vajrayana perspective is completed. So we finished all the teachings now in Jampa Control's small text on the practice related to the view. And so that means that in the text we've reached what Jampa Control said right at the beginning. The third and final part of the text is explaining the benefits of receiving this teaching. I suppose putting it at the end is like a final encouragement for us, having heard it, to make use of it. And of course, how much we can make use, then it really depends on how much we want to study and practice this. And there'll be all kinds of different approaches that one could follow. For instance, if you're practitioner, Kamakaji practitioner of Mahamudra, you might see this teaching on Shentong as a kind of a helpful support to this. If you receive the authentic Kaji Mahamudra teachings, for instance, coming from the 9th Karmapa, then the Shentong teachings here in this text would not be contradictory to that, but it wouldn't be necessary to change your mode of practice, but just this would kind of be like a helpful contribution to that, helpful additional point to be integrated into that. And again, similarly, if you are practicing Dzogchen from the Nyingma perspective, then this also could be like very much helpful to that. But if one is not practicing either Dzogchen or Mahamudra, this could be a standalone practice. So there's many different ways you you could use the teaching. But anyway, let's go through the benefits of this, as Control explains them, at least. So, he says, at the end of this age of quarrels, more familiar phrase probably for you is the Kali Yuga, which is we're living in. In fact, actually, this idea of cycles is very much stressed in the Kala Chakra, where it's said that the Kala Chakra teaching was given originally in the Golden Age. Of course, we've very much declined since that time. So, Jampa Contra said, at the end of this Kali Yuga, I mean, he wrote this in something in the mid-19th century, late 19th century, but I think I would be surprised if anybody could argue that we're no longer in the Kali Yuga. It seems we have all the evidence that it's getting deeper. At the end of this Kali Yuga, the proliferation of the 5 general deteriorations, such as deteriorations in view, deteriorations in disturbing emotions, meaning they're getting stronger, shortness of life span, and so on. These general deteriorations have created 28 deteriorations of view, and the merit of sentient beings has shrunk. And that is why, he says, there's nowadays little respect for the sutras of the essence of definitive meaning, the sutras given by Buddha in the third turn of the wheel, in which the Buddha nature is the main subject, those 20 sutras that we mentioned a number of times. So out of laziness, people do not meditate on the method, on the meaning of these teachings. Contra Lord Thaye is reflecting the situation in Tibet, that that time from the 17th century onwards, there was definitely a decline in the promotion of these teachings, of the Shentong and Buddha nature teachings. And he is part of, if you like, the reviving movement. So first he's got to complain that they've kind of declined in popularity. Out of laziness, people do not meditate on the meaning of these teachings. Since lack of confidence in these sutras is the cause of erroneous views, like treating emptiness as a mere negation, as a kind of nothingness, or as just a kind of conceptual label. These are all deviations in understanding emptiness, of course. Since this lack of conviction in the Essence Sutras is the cause of erroneous views, some will fall into the great abyss of the lower rebirths and will cut the climbing rope of liberation. They'll not have any confidence that they can, they'll lose the method and lose confidence that Buddhahood can be attained by just fixating on bare negation, emptiness. So it has been taught. But by contrast, the benefits of hearing this profound doctrine are greater than the accomplishments of giving, moral discipline, and meditation. Very great things, of course, but to hear this, and notice, just to hear it is even more important than meditating on teachings that don't possess the Buddha nature teaching. Because, of course, usually we say reflecting is higher than hearing, and meditation is higher than both of them, to Samgom. Hear, think, meditate. But here, hearing about the Buddha nature teachings and having faith in them is most important. So, he says, Contra says, the great benefits of hearing this profound Dharma have been taught in the Jude Lama, Supreme Continuity. So let's explain them. But first he says, to show how important hearing the Buddha nature sutras are, I'll just talk about how much merit, what's the benefit of faith simply in the common Mahayana sutras, in the ordinary Mahayana sutras, let alone the Buddha nature ones. So it says, whoever develops faith in the Mahayana will not be reborn in the lowest realm for 1,000 eons, will not be born in the ghost realm for 5,000 eons, and will not be born in the realms of the gods and Brahmins. I think actually that is it's ambiguous there whether it's Brahmin, the person, member of the highest caste in Hindu system, or Brahma, the god, who is born in as the chief form realm gods. It's ambiguous because of the ending in the Tibetan. So anyway, whether it's Brahma himself or merely one of his followers in this world, you will not be reborn there for 25,000 eons. And let's hope by that time you're ready to achieve Buddhahood. Anyway, so again, another kind of advertisement for the Mahayana Sutras. In the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, it says, it is taught that whoever has heard the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, whether it's the Heart Sutra or the 100,000 verses or whatever it is, will go to the Buddha field after death, and that the merit of meditating upon the Perfection of Wisdom, just for the time it takes to click your fingers, exceeds an eon of hearing Dharma and serving all sentient beings with the necessity of life. You know, it's so transformative to hear the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras that it outweighs the benefit of anything else. Now, these are just the common Mahayana Sutras, their benefits. As for this, the Essence Sutras, from the third turn of the wheel, the Sutras on Buddha nature, Control quotes the sutra called Sandhina Mochana Sutra, with a kind of fairly complex bit of maths for you. It says in the Sandhina Mochana that if one compares the dust on a fingernail or the water in a cow's hoof print with, in the first case, the dust on the entire surface of the earth, so one fingernail or entire surface of the earth, or water in a cow's hoof print with water in the 4 oceans. Of course, the water in the oceans is incomparably more than the water in a cow's hoof print. The dust of the earth is far greater than the dust on your fingernail. Similarly, the merit of applying oneself to practicing meditation with faith in the sutras of provisional meaning, those that do not teach Buddha nature directly, is so much smaller, not even a fraction of the merit of having faith in and meditating on the sutras of definitive meaning, the Buddha nature sutras. And again, in the Angulimala Sutra, one of the Buddha nature sutras, it says, the existence of the Buddha nature, whether it is with or without disturbing emotions, is to be called the perfect Buddha, meaning that what the Buddha nature teachings are telling you is that even if you are surrounded by the defilements right now, currently, you still are in a way the perfect Buddha. So this is like a statement is incomparably more powerful than the teachings in the normal Mahayana sutras. And again, it says in the same sutra, by recognizing that the permanent Buddha nature exists in all beings, one will acquire the supreme happiness of this world and as much wealth as one can have. That's useful. By hearing teachings of the permanent Buddha nature, one will always attain all wealth of the 3 times and all the happiness on earth and in the highest realms. It is useful because I believe the stock exchange is crashing at the moment, so invest in Buddha nature. It's much safer. Of course, one might say, well, that's rather strange to talk about such mundane things. How to understand that? And I think how to understand it is that if one is aligned with the true nature of reality, the Buddha nature, everything will go well. I mean, it might appear, from some side perspective, that there's ups and downs, things going on, economy is doing this, that, and the other, but you have the true wealth, the inner wealth, as His Holiness Karmapa has described it so many times, the true wealth of confidence in the Buddha nature. And of course, through dependent origination of outer following inner, that is likely to bring about in your life the necessary good conditions, which we may call wealth. It may not be money in the bank, it may not be gold, but it will be the necessary conditions for practicing the Dharma. So I think that is how we should understand such statements. And again, continuing from the same sutra, by the merit of hearing teachings on Buddha nature, one will be freed from sickness and harms, have long life and joy in all lives. By hearing teachings of the Buddha nature, permanent, stable, unchanging, enduring, which is in fact the deathless final nirvana. All prosperity will be firm and stable for a long time. So all these statements, I think, need to be interpreted in this way to signify the wonderful transforming power of confidence in the Buddha nature. Again, it says in the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, like one of the 20 Buddha nature sutras in this case, those beings who teach that the Buddha nature exists in all sentient beings possess limitless qualities. Those children of a good family who aspire to this holy Dharma will be immediately purified of innumerable negative actions of headaches, affliction by diseases, pain and harm. And again, to kind of relate that in a comprehensible way, if one does have confidence in the Buddha nature, in oneself and all beings, then it's like things finally have come into their proper perspective, because the value of the Buddha nature outweighs everything else. It is the source of all stability, because one is now settled in the true nature of reality, which is unchanging, and is endowed with all good qualities, compassion, wisdom, and so on. So although from a relative point of view, different appearances arising, some of negativity, some of positivity, they're empty like the clouds. They're not real, they're not our real nature, and we're grounded in our true nature. Hence, therefore, such things as headaches, affliction by disease, and so on, will not cause any distress or any difficulty. One might even recall, for instance, that in the life of the Nirmanakaya, Shakyamuni Buddha himself, for instance, towards the end of his life, his body appeared to weaken and be afflicted by illnesses. Even one time, it said that his body came to an end through dysentery, very archetypally Indian kind of condition, one might think. But of course, Shakyamuni did not exhibit any distress or suffering through his body appearing to manifest these symptoms of sickness, because of course he was already a Buddha, and therefore he was freed from the distress of sickness. This is how we should understand this. But as the same sutra says, those who have faith in this permanent Dharma of the Buddha are as rare as the Udumbara flower. The Udumbara flower is a mythical flower, or maybe it's real, I don't know, which is supposed to flower just once every time a perfect Buddha appears in the world. So its appearance is very rare. But to get back to stressing the positivity of this, the Parinirvana Sutra also says, whoever develops faith upon hearing this extremely profound Mahayana Sutra will not fall into lower realms in the future for 100,000 eons. And as I said with a similar quote earlier, one must assume that they'll never fall into hell, because through confidence in the Buddha Nature Sutra, they will arrive at Buddhahood, let alone be reborn in hells or any other lower realms. Again, it says, for a son or daughter of the lineage, meaning belonging to this family of teaching, who has faith in this type of teaching, the Buddha is permanent. The holy Dharma will not decline. The Sangha will not disappear. I mean, as a conditioned phenomena, Buddhism is an institution, and therefore conditioned. It arises and passes away, as Buddha himself has described, in talking about the decline of the Dharma, after which time the sixth Buddha Maitreya will appear and teach the Dharma again. So there is, in one way, from one angle, disappearance of Dharma, disappearance of statues of the Buddha, disappearance of the Dharma, disappearance of the Sangha, monastic Sangha following the Dharma. But if you have confidence in the Buddha nature teaching, you know it never disappears. It is always there and present, and to be rediscovered once again. If such a person makes effort in understanding, they will see the realm of the Buddhas, which is the same nature as themselves. And again, it says, just as, for example, this is the same sutra, just as, for example, when the sun rises, night comes to nothing, so by merely hearing these Buddha Nature Sutras, the four defeats the 4 defeats through which you're expelled as a monk or a nun from the monastic sangha, such as taking human life, and the 5 sins of boundless consequence, such as drawing blood from a Buddha, that sins that ripen immediately without you even going to the bardo at the end of your life. Even if you've done these really gross things, even if you've opposed others or interfered in the faith of others, or found meaning only in teachings on how to get riches and fame, even if you've ignored the intention to gain enlightenment, whether for yourself or for others, if such a person who is degraded in this way merely hears these sutras, he will enter into, the causes of enlightenment will enter into every pore of their body like grains of dust in the summer. So at the places of continues, at the places of previous Buddhas, there will be beings as numerous as grains of the sand in the river Ganges, who will generate bodhicitta. So this is like a prophecy of how this teaching will manifest in the future, made by Buddha himself, this prophecy. And in those evil times, those beings will not deny this Dharma, but have faith in it. At the places of Buddhas, there will be beings as numerous as the sands of 8 river Ganges, who will generate bodhicitta. And even if the times are evil, they will uphold, remember, and recite this sutra, and also urge others to receive it, to uphold it, to remember it, to copy it, and thus to perfectly understand its meaning, be able to teach it, and so forth, and thus greatly spread it. So it's like a prophecy and an injunction given by the Buddha, prophecy that its teaching will spread, an injunction to his disciples that you must spread it in the future. In brief, in talking about the benefits, we can briefly kind of summarize all talk on the benefits by quoting Kunchen Dolpopa. Kunchen Shabjatsam Dolpopa has said, if Buddhahood can be reached merely by hearing about the characteristics of Buddha nature, what can you say of having faith and respect and actually meditating upon it? So it's like, that must be amazing. The qualities, the benefits of that must be amazing. If just by hearing about it is possible, just hearing about it makes Buddhahood possible, then if you go further than hearing, you actually develop confidence in it, and you practice it, you meditate on it, Buddhahood must be so easy then. Dolpopa continues, therefore, wise ones, or intelligent ones, if you like, who have compassion should give this teaching, even though they might lose their lives and so forth. Dolpopa is probably writing this around about 1320, I guess, something like that. In 1642, the Jonampa teaching was banned in central Tibet, and their monasteries were confiscated, and Dolpopa's own books were not allowed to be printed. So perhaps he had something in mind here. Even though they might lose their lives, at the same time, of course, several hundred Kamakaji monasteries also were confiscated. Therefore, wise ones who have compassion should give this teaching, even though they might lose their lives, and so on. Those who strive for liberation should seek it out and listen to it, even if they have to cross a great pit of fire. So that's Dolpopa's like advertisement for the power of this teaching, and like his injunction to all followers of this teaching. So as Contra concludes, thus these instructions on the Shentong view should be held as the nyingtik, the innermost essence, like the pith, the quintessential teachings. Like of all the Buddhist teachings, this is the essence of them, the nyingtik. So Contra just adds a little bit here at this end of the text about the lineage of this. You can read it in the translation, but it's very significant, I think, that he mentions lineage transmitted down to Taranata, that great Dolpo Jonang master in the late 16th and early 17th century, who died in the early 17th century. And then, as I already just alluded to a couple of seconds ago, the great difficulties came for the Shentong teaching when the Jonang tradition was more or less banned in central Tibet, and even Karmakaju, who had, of course, also promulgated Shentong a lot, they came under severe restrictions for some time. So it means that the Shentong teachings were eclipsed, particularly in central Tibet, for a long time. But they didn't disappear, they were not broken. And in fact, in this list of lamas that Control makes here, he mentions some of the key figures in the revitalization of this. Because the teaching did not break after Taranata's own consort, the great woman yogini Jesuma Kungatilni Wommo, she held the teaching and gave it to some others. And then by the early 18th century, so like 1730, something like that, the great Nyingma Lama Katok Seon Nobu, master from monastery of Katok in Kham, he was very interested in Shentong, so he went to receive these teachings. And at the same time, he was very close friends with the 8th Situ, Situ Tembininje, or Situ Dhammakara, and with the 13th Karmapa Dudu Dorji. And in fact, they all went on pilgrimage together to Nepal around about that time. But through these three masters, the Shentong teaching was particularly revived. The Jonangs continued in far east Tibet, they never stopped there, but in central Tibet and so on and Kham, it was these three masters who mainly revitalized it, Sewan Nobu, Tembininje, and Dudu Dorji. And then from them, then after that, it was the 9th Situ, Permaninji Wompo, who maintained the Shentong teachings, and he passed them to Jamgon Control Lodro Dai. So that is the kind of, I mean, there are other parts, other transmissions happen there, other masters involved, but that's the essential, those are the key figures down to Control. So after that, he simply adds, this text was based upon the blessing lineage from compositions on the view by the 13th Karmapa, Dudu Dorji, and also by the ripening initiation and liberating instructions of Kala Chakra, and various other pure sources of the lineage. So then he makes a short dedication prayer, in which to dedicate the merit of the teaching, in which he says that the view, you should study the view as it's taught primarily in the Jud Lama, the Uttara Tantra Shastra. For the practice, so that's the Tawa. For the meditation, the Gom, you should mainly practice according to Kala Chakra. And for the activity, the conduct, this should be in accord with the King of Aspirations prayer, which of course is the activity of the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra. So it's a handy summary. View, Jud Lama. Meditation, Kala Chakra, particularly the 6-limbed yoga. And conduct, activity, the King of Aspirations. As he says, when view, meditation, action are pure, then the two benefits of yourself and other, by you achieving Buddhahood, of course, are quickly accomplished. Yes, that is it. And he says, with virtue, may I and all sentient beings abandon the 5 great faults, such as contempt for others, lack of confidence that one can attain Buddhahood and so on. Abandoning the 5 great faults and attaining their opposites, the 5 great qualities, may we all accomplish the ultimate truth, Dhammadhatu, the true nature of reality. So he says that he was requested to give these teachings, and so he composed it for the Dhamma community of Sri Zamtang. Zamtang is a Jonampa monastery in eastern Tibet, where he visited and gave this teaching. So that concludes the teaching through the translation. So simply all that remains to wrap it up is for me to finish reading the lung, which I began yesterday. So at least then you have some connection to the lineage. names of those teachers you heard through Jamgon Kongtrul's text. And of course also every day here, or most days, wonderfully enough, we have the fourth incarnation of the very Jamgon Kongtrul himself to teach the Buddha nature teaching according to Third Karmapa's wonderful works, the Namshi Yeshi in the Nyingpo Tempa. So if you've been also able to attend that, then that's really totally appropriate and very good kind of tendril, good kind of auspicious sign to hear about Shentong from such a eminent source. But I'm happy I was able to share this with you. For myself, I think I first heard Shentong teachings when during the second visit of His Holiness Karmapa to Europe, 16th Karmapa that is, because on that second visit he brought with him the Kempo called Kempo Sutim Jamso. Now he was a friend actually of my master Kamatin Rinpoche. They knew each other in Tibet quite well. We studied together sometimes. So, but Kempo Sutim Jamso already had a name as really very strongly stressing the Shentong teaching. So after 16th Karmapa left England, Kempo Sutim Jamso stayed for a little while, and so I took the opportunity. I mean, I'd heard of Shentong, of course, by that time. I took the opportunity to go to see him privately. He stayed in London for a few days and requested transmission of the Jude Lama, the lung, and some teachings on Jude Lama. So that was, in a way, my first connection with Shentong properly through Kempo Sutim. And then, in the next few years, Kamatin Rinpoche gave me many more teachings on Shentong. He gave me the Jude Lama again, of course, and also the long commentary on the Jude Lama, composed by the first Kongtrul, and then the works of the third Karmapa and so on, and eighth Karmapa Micho Dorji, who wrote on Shentong as well, and this work. So it's through these two masters, Kempo Sutim and particularly through Kamatin Rinpoche, that I had some connection with Shentong. And at that time, well, sometime around then anyway, Rinpoche said to me, when you're among Kajupas, then you should uphold the Shentong view. So that's what I'm doing. And that while you're with Sakyapas, you should uphold the view of Karmapa Sanam Sengi, which is slightly different. So I'm also doing that. And then, but just before he passed, he's great, His Holiness Shamra Rinpoche then asked me, or kind of said, go to America and teach Shentong in America in the Bodhipath centers. So I've also tried to do that in accordance with Rinpoche's wishes, and taught it actually quite a lot in Europe because of that. And I feel that I'm also fulfilling Shamra Rinpoche's injunction by sharing this text here. So anyway, behind this teaching, therefore, really those great masters, and if it has some blessing, then I guess it must be through their influence and so on. So I'm really happy we were able to spend this time together, and I hope it's beneficial. And anyway, any errors and so on will all be dissolved due to the Buddha activity of His Holiness. I kind of don't feel too nervous. I feel quite relaxed about that. So anyway, we'll all be together this afternoon. But otherwise, in particular, I hope to see many of you in different places over the coming year. So let's finish with dedication made, because I know, first of all, you don't have any questions, because His Holiness Karmapa can solve all questions, and secondly, you're hungry. So let's just dedicate merit. Sunam di tanche sikpa tobe ne pe danam pamche ne chigana chi bala drupe sepe sole roa sho. His Holiness usually says, I don't know, he doesn't say goodbye to the viewers much now, but he always says hello. So I don't think we've got any viewers left, because I forbade the lung to be transmitted. But if there are any viewers watching silently, bye. And to everybody else, see you this afternoon.